Especially in CIO positions, the decisions that we make, of course, have a pretty substantial impact on the organization and the people. And I believe that it is so important to genuinely listen to your teams before making these decisions. And so if you want to make a change in structure, if you want to make a change in policy, that it's always best to have the conversations with the people that are going to be impacted by those decisions.
Welcome to our 21st edition of Leading with Relevance. Today we have a great person with us, Chris Crist, and I want to talk a little bit about him. But before I do that, why do we do this? And Leading with Relevance is really talking about, what people are doing that are, I like to say, busting through the status quo, both from a standpoint of companies, community, family, et cetera, et cetera. The goals we have is interview and highlight personal and professional journeys and find out, as Simon Sinek would say, each leader's why. And for listeners, hopefully there's practical insights that you can apply to your own pathway. I'm Tino Mantella, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Relevance. And I love the opportunity to really speak to leaders because I learn every time. It's a great podcast. This is our 21st, as I said. So today I have the pleasure of interviewing, as I said, Chris Crist. Chris is at the airport Senior Deputy General Manager. Let me say that again. Airport Senior Deputy General Manager and Chief Information Officer at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. He's responsible for all aspects of technology, including cybersecurity, network operations, software applications, innovation, project management, AI, and so on and so on. He's also, where we met, he's the recipient of the Georgia CIO Orby Awards, which is a pretty big deal here in the state and beyond. He's received the Advancing DevSecOps Award in 2020. He's a board member of Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. He's got his bachelor's degree and MBA from Western Governor University in information technology, a doctorate in education and leadership and learning organizations from Vanderbilt. And he served over 20 years as an officer in the U.S. Air Force Reserve and also served as a CIO, one of the divisions of the Air Force, for 2 years. So, Chris, welcome. That was a pretty long, but you've got a lot going on. So I appreciate you doing this today.
Yeah, Tino, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to the discussion.
I always like to start, and you and I had a bit of conversation when we over lunch, which I love to hear, just people's upbringing, early part of your life. I know you grew up in a large Hispanic or Latino family, and I think you have an inspiring story to tell. So talk a little bit about, what that all meant to you. And I know you're first generation college, maybe the first person, right?
That's correct. I feel like a lot of us, how we were raised, the circumstances in which we were raised, it certainly has an impact on us long term. And I think for some of us, we can use that in a positive way. Regardless of if it was rough or if it was a good time. For me, I grew up with my Hispanic family, and I am mixed. So, but I didn't know my father till I was 20 years old. So
Okay.
my Hispanic family was all I knew. And but yeah, we didn't have very much in terms of means. My grandmother, she never went to schooling of any kind, so she never learned how to read or write or drive a vehicle. And we were ultimately raised a lot of time by her. And so she ended up with 6 kids, of course, my aunts, uncles, my mom, but none of them got through high school. And so that's pretty much the world that I knew. I didn't think that college was for us. It just was what it was. I just
Yeah.
didn't think that it was for my cousins, for my siblings, for any of us. I just didn't think that was in the cards for us. And so I didn't think of a professional career as something that I would end up doing. And so that was a lot of my upbringing. And it wasn't until I joined the military that I got exposed to people from all walks of life who were actually making it happen, right? They were going to college and working a professional career.
So how
There's a
did
lot
you
of my
just,
upbringing with that.
yeah, but
It's fun.
how did you make the decision? So you were out of high school, and was it the decision you made then that you wanted to join the military, or? How did you come to that decision?
You know, I, growing up, we were one of many that, my siblings and cousins, it was just a reality that our family just had a lot of kids very early. So you didn't really feel very special, right? You were never called out for, hey, you're great or anything like that.
Yeah,
And so, um, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know what I could do, but I did know that I wanted to somehow have meaning, to somehow have impact. And I think perhaps maybe it's because I never really felt that way growing up. I didn't
yeah.
really feel like I was having an impact. So I thought maybe the military could give me that opportunity. I knew nothing about the military, but I thought, if I join the healthcare profession in the military, maybe I can have an impact on other lives. And so I joined as a combat medic, thinking that maybe I could have that impact on people and start to feel like I have meaning.
And so, somewhere along the line, you became part of the Air Force. So was that through the combat medical side or
Yeah,
medic side?
yes. Yeah, absolutely. I joined the Air Force as in the healthcare profession. Yeah. Yeah, as a combat medic.
Did you think you wanted to fly? Was that one of the motivations, or what? The Army, Navy, Coast Guard. You picked
Yeah,
the Air
no,
Force, or they picked you? What was the deal there?
yeah. I I walked into I walked into a recruiter's office. The Army was on my left. Marines was over here. The Air Force office was open. I walked into the Air Force
That is
office.
so
I,
funny.
I knew nothing about the branches. I knew nothing about what it meant. I didn't know if the Air Force was better than another. I just wanted to
Yeah,
join the
I love that story. So it's just by
military.
chance, door number one, door number two, or door number
Exactly.
three.
Of course,
Wow.
I'm so thankful I chose the Air
Yeah.
Force. It worked out well.
So long time in the Air Force. Maybe talk about some key lessons that you learned there, because I know from there you gained a lot of insights, and sounds like
Yeah.
you built a lot of confidence there too, and saw that you had helped to define your purpose.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I'm so thankful for the Air Force because it did. It gave me that. As a matter of fact, it really lit a fire under me. I think that if I were to say it differently, I was actually angry, believe it or not. I was angry because I felt as for so many years that myself, my brothers and sisters, my cousins, that we weren't capable of doing these things that I was seeing with my own eyes in the military, people were actually doing. They were going to college. They're from all over the world, joining the United States military to make a better life for themselves. They were going to college, working very important jobs, doing very important things at a pretty young age. And I was mad about that because I
Yeah.
felt like, man, I could have been doing this. And so I felt like I was behind. I felt like other people were 2 miles ahead and I was still at the starting line. And so it really lit a fire under me to start going to college, again, knowing nothing about how to even get started with that process,
Yeah.
and just obsessed over the 6 year active duty commitment of just getting into my education, certifications, getting the experience I needed. And the military just allowed me to really dive into that.
Did you have some, I'm guessing that you had some really good mentors in the military. Any one or two people you want to point out how they helped you, or because,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. The military, so many mentors in the military. And I think that thankfully the military is really good at training leaders to do that. And I had a major, so he was going to be a lieutenant colonel. He was like the CIO of that hospital system, so
okay.
he oversaw technology. And I was 19 years old, and he learned about me, and he learned that I was pursuing an education in technology. And he thought, you know what? He talked to me. He saw something in me apparently, and he put me in charge. He put me in charge of the IT department there, and that was the second largest hospital in the military at the time.
Wow.
And Tino, I gotta say, I was pretty upset at the time. I didn't think I was ready for that. I thought that was way too much responsibility. I don't
Yeah.
know what I'm doing, but of course, in hindsight, I'm incredibly thankful that he gave me that opportunity.
Yeah. He made you stretch a bit.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
But you, I'm assuming when you were in high school, all the way into the military, you probably didn't have a lot of technology background. Did you have a propensity towards tech at some point, or how did you fall
No,
into the tech side?
I really honestly didn't think that I was going to get into technology, engineering, healthcare, all those amazing professions. I just didn't think that was for me in high school. In high school, transparently, I barely survived high school. I think I had a very low GPA. I barely made it through. When I joined the military and I was in the healthcare space, I actually got exposed to some people that were in technology. And I thought, wow, that's really fascinating. Technology, I wanted to have an impact on people.
Yeah,
And I was seeing how technology was doing that in a pretty big way. I was one on one person at a time, the impact I was having.
yeah,
But I looked at technology and how it can impact the entire organization, and so I got really interested in it at that point, and decided to try to pursue, education in tech.
yeah. So maybe talk a little bit about your transition in tech. Where you've gone. Now you've won an Orby Award, which is a huge deal. And I loved your comments when you were on stage. I was very humble. You were very humble and just really inspired me. That's why I said I need to call Chris and get him on this the
Yeah.
podcast. But that's a long journey to now be CIO of the largest airport in the world.
Hmm.
So what's
Yeah.
sort of that track that you took to go from door number one, number two, and number three again?
Well, thankfully, I think at this point it was a little more uh, focused. So I once I was getting that experience in leading technology there, it was specifically at Keesler Medical Center down at Keesler Air Force Base.
Yeah,
I It really opened my eyes to maybe I can do this in the civilian world. Maybe this is something I can make a career out of. Maybe I can be the CIO, and so that's what I focused on during those 6 years. Tino, I had no life at all. I went to college, I worked, I got 9 IT certifications. I
wow.
got the master's degree in that time frame, all because I knew that the military was going to support me
Yeah,
financially with that while I was in. So I just really had no life. That's all I focused on. I was obsessed with trying to prove to my family, to myself, that we can do these things. I was obsessed with trying to prove it out. And so once I got all that under my belt and I had a few months left active duty, I started interviewing with different organizations, and I was shooting for the stars. I was shooting for CIO jobs in the civilian world. And people were calling me crazy. Like, "No, that's insane. You're far too young. And plus the military is stable. You shouldn't leave," because it was around
yeah,
the crisis back in the day, and so housing crisis and all that. So people were just a little concerned, but I took the leap, and someone gave me a chance, in the civilian world. I became CIO of a hospital organization at the age of 25 years old.
yeah. That's amazing. Let me take a step back and say you have a number of siblings, right? Did they kind of follow your lead? Were you the oldest of the group, or
I was the oldest.
yeah? So are some of the other ones got in the military or college, or they're all doing their own thing?
Yeah, no, they didn't go through the military. Although a couple of them wanted to. Their spouses would not allow it.
Oh, yeah,
And of course they regret that now. But I did. I have, I wish I could give you a more positive story on that.
yeah,
I will say that one sibling,
yeah,
my sister, she actually did. She pursued her bachelor's degree and succeeded in getting that, and so I'm very proud of her for that. But otherwise, it's just, I think it's just a recognition of how difficult it can be to, as they say, break the cycle, right?
yeah,
As they say, generation to generation, it can be difficult to really
yeah.
leap far from where maybe perhaps your parents were at.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. A lot of my background's in nonprofit. I ran YMCA's and in different nonprofit organizations, and I could see that. And as you think about, not to get into politics, but any way you can figure out how to get kids started early, whether it's Head Start or childcare, foster care if needed, family support, mentors, that's all important to break that cycle, like you said. So, you're a great story, and it sounds like, for any family, it doesn't all happen at once. Rag to riches, everybody's gonna be, doing great and following your lead and whatever. But, if there's one or two, and then, that next generation hopefully continues to move on. So, um, so I'm going to jump around a little bit, but you have a great CIO career now. And one of the things that you've gotten to the position sounds like of confidence. And I know you've said, I won't take a job unless we have a seat at the table. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah, that's certainly based on experience for sure. And so more specifically, what that means is for the CIO role or the person who's leading technology to have a seat at the table with the other executives, right,
Yeah.
in an organization. And the reason why I feel so strongly about that, I was at a hospital organization, had taken on the role, and at first, for whatever reason, I was
Yeah.
reporting to the chief of human resources.
Okay.
Now she was great. I still talk to her today. I love her. She's fantastic. But it was the moment that I realized the impact of that was we were moving forward with this amazing initiative. We were going to reduce our expenses in terms of our internet service provider by half, but also increase our bandwidth by 10 times. It was an incredible opportunity. And so it was working through a lot of different initiatives. Well, she went to the board of directors, so I didn't go to that meeting. She went to a board meeting and she attempted to explain that whole scenario.
Yeah.
They were wondering, how is this possible? How are you able to reduce but also increase the bandwidth, right? And so the only she was telling me about this the next day, and she said, Chris, the only thing I can explain is that we were going from this, and she used her hands, she went like this to this.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh my gosh!" I was like, I have to be there. I
Yeah.
have to be there." And so because it's a disservice to the hard work that the IT team is putting in place, the things that they're doing is so impactful. And if you can't explain it to your leaders in a manner that makes sense, then we're really losing, momentum. We're really it's harder for those technology professionals to feel like they're contributing. And so it was just about a month later, I was reporting directly to the CEO, and I was the one presenting
Yeah.
to the board of directors. Now that's a silly example, but of course there are many reasons why it's important
Yeah.
to me, the
No,
table.
and I think it's a great example because back when I started at Technology Association of Georgia in 2004, we used to joke and say, and I think I might even mention this to you, it's like, we don't know what they're doing in IT. You just have to slide the pizza under the door and they're locked in there. And then you figure out like what's going on. And then all of a sudden over the last, 20 years, now you have to be at the table for like security issues.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure all the boards want to talk about and the leadership wants to talk about AI and how we're using AI and that
Of
sort of thing.
course.
But you were one that helped to little by little, the whole industry has changed where, CIOs, CTOs, CISOs are all key people. So
Hmm.
that's great for the folks listening to just, sometimes you have to really push to get that seat, but for CIO or leader in tech not to be at the table nowadays seems like it's, as you said, it was a disservice then, and it's even more of a disservice now, probably.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so, when you were giving your comments at the Orby Awards,
Mm.
you mentioned your wife Talia and talked about lifelong partner. How does
Mhm.
you had your own family upbringing and now you have your own family, but how does family influence your resilience, motivation, leadership
Mhm.
style?
Well, I feel it's actually highly impactful for me, and I know I touched on it a little bit, but there were plenty of times where three generations were living in the same household, and not because we wanted to,
Yeah,
because we had to make it work. And
yeah,
I think that um, you grow close in certain ways when you go through those things together. And so for me, I'm so grateful to be where I'm at. And oftentimes, because of my family dynamic, um, I have imposter syndrome even today.
Mm,
I when I go back and visit my family, um, I'm reminded of the life that I lived for so
yeah,
long with them. And um, thankfully they're happy, and that's really all that matters.
yeah,
But it is a reminder of how far I've been able to come on my own when it comes to my own, let's just say, accomplishments, I suppose, and where I'm at today. I mean, being the CIO for the busiest airport in the world, that's incredible. That's incredible. I'm so thankful for that. Um, but it is a struggle. To the imposter syndrome is a very real thing. So I think the family dynamic plays into that. But I'm continue to be motivated to just prove that myself, and again, as I mentioned to you before, that they can accomplish these things. And so the next generation
yeah,
beneath me, I'm very optimistic for them. They're already incredibly smart individuals. My nieces and nephews, and that generation, they're very smart, and they
yeah,
have ambition to be able to accomplish things. And oftentimes I'm the person that they're talking to,
yeah,
because I'm the person who's done this, right? So
yeah,
so in a way, I have this sense of an obligation to make sure that I am there for them, and that maybe we can, if they want to pursue these things, that hey, let's make it happen. And so when it comes to Tally, though, my wife, that's also been on the professional side, things have been thankfully propelled, but she has helped me to propel on my personal side. She's really helped me to develop relationships with my family to be even stronger than they were before. She's all around just made me a better person. So it's been an incredible. I'm just so thankful for so many reasons, Tino.
yeah. Yeah, it's good when spouses can do that. I have some similar stories there. So, um, let's shift gears to Hartsfield Jackson. So, is it right that you move more than 300,000 passengers each day? And I think that's the right number, or depends that
Yeah,
time of year, I guess. And then,
average, yeah, on
so
average, yeah,
on
absolutely.
average, yeah. So, and then, so there's got to be a lot of unique challenges, and we have, a lot of our audience are technology related. So, what is it? What are the IT challenges? Is a broad
Oh,
question in terms of running the world's busiest airport.
all
And
right.
yeah,
Yeah, this is where you're going to get me geeking out. This is the passion.
there you go.
Passion's going to come out. This is so 300,000 on average passengers that come through here every single day. There's 63,000 employees that are here as well that work at this organization. We, unlike some airports, we are limited to how much we can physically grow.
Yeah.
And so you have some airports like Denver, it's huge, right? But they don't see as many passengers as us. So it's an interesting dynamic that we have, an interesting challenge, I should say. Frank Rucker is someone I respect very greatly. He's one of my peers. He oversees our capital and infrastructure and building, all of that. But you can only build so fast. You can only build so much. I mean, just one of the projects that he's working on is expanding one of our concourses, just widening it. That's
Okay.
$1.3 billion
Oh,
dollars
geez.
to do
Yeah.
just that. So, so, so then with the space that we have to be as efficient as possible. So then that's where technology comes in,
Yeah.
right? In order to get passengers to get through here as quickly as possible, well, we know it's going to be through tech. And so, but I just want to, set the stage that is a big part of our challenge here is
Yeah.
that gosh, the demand keeps growing and growing, and we have record-breaking days that happen every single year where we're far beyond the 300,000.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I'll just set the stage there, and I would love to get into some specific tech that we're working to incorporate.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to set the stage, and that's amazing. And I never thought of it like it's because we see the airport and the parking lots being built and or refurbished or whatever, but you're sort of landlocked, it sounds like at this point. So you got to make do with what you have and be more efficient, it sounds like. So one of the things you talked about was adopting wireless first IT strategy, and saying it's no longer optional. So what sort of triggered that? philosophy, and what have you done in that area?
Well, so much more is relying on that technology, whether it's through Wi-Fi capability or cellular capability.
Yeah,
So, for example, the biometric recognition. So, passengers, as they go through our checkpoints, now they're going to see a lot more biometric recognition, where we have a camera that recognizes your face and compares it
right.
to a database. And so it makes things significantly faster when it comes to processing our passengers through the checkpoints, and really more convenient for the passengers because you typically don't have to, have as much documents on you to
Yeah,
provide. But in order for that technology to work, it connects to our Wi-Fi infrastructure. And so more and more is connecting to wireless infrastructure. And so this year, for example, here in 2026, I'm really excited to say that we're going to have our $180 million project, a brand new distributed antenna system that'll be completed, which will boost cellular signal throughout our entire organization. So you're going to have the latest and greatest 5G capability for folks that land here. It was a partnership between, our three big carriers in the United States, but
yeah.
we're very, very excited about it. But technology, even not just our passengers, but technology is connecting to cellular capability as well. So yeah, a lot more is relying on it.
Yeah, and I also this might relate to what you just said, but 110 million being spent on fiber loop modernization.
Mm.
So a lot of your work is kind of behind the scenes in infrastructure to make things more efficient and effective for the passengers. But what is that? Where do you stand with that one?
So, we are fortunate here in that there are some things that are direct passenger impacts, like the AI overlay, biometric recognition capabilities, security access control, CCTV capabilities, and so forth, so forth. But yes, behind the scene, of course, all of that relies on behind the scene infrastructure, to your point. The fiber loop initiative is something I'm really excited about. If I could show you a map, I would be able to show you that we're going to have a fiber loop that goes around the entire airport and connects back to our primary data center. And so the point of doing this, though, along the way, we have vaults along the way. And so now, today, for example, you have some buildings. So we have a lot of buildings. We have fire stations that are, distributed throughout the airport. You have all sorts of different buildings that employees work out of. And sometimes you have to make a home run connection all the way to the data center, which isn't really the best thing to do. You may have latency concerns. You could have single points of failure. So when we create this fiber loop, when we have all these vaults along the way, any buildings that are near that vault will connect to that vault, and then that vault is a part of the fiber loop. And so if there's something that
Wow.
happens between two vaults, for example, you still have connectivity one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
So it really helps us with resiliency and redundancy.
When I met you, you talked about CCTV and 7,000 cameras.
Mhm.
And $80 million investment. That
Mhm.
sounds really exciting. I know I think you're in kind of the middle of that. You've done a lot of that
Mhm.
already, or
Mhm.
and
Yes.
how do people at the airport, like, what do they see? I guess I'd say.
So, that to me is the most exciting thing. And if there's anything in the aviation space that's going to be transformational, it's actually going to be, I know the concept of a CCTV, so a camera that's just in the ceiling, isn't very exciting by itself. But when you apply an AI overlay
Yeah,
to that, that's when things get very exciting. And so I really believe this is going to be one of the most transformational, if not the most transformational to the passenger experience, because here's a problem statement. I'll just give a problem statement. Today, you may have someone that comes into a concourse, they leave a bag unattended, and they just walk away from it.
right.
The only description you have, they have a red hat, blue jacket. That's all you have. Male, went this direction. Today, it's a little bit of a manual process where our security professionals, they may be notified, and then they just manually try to look through their cameras and determine, okay, where are they at? Where did they go? With an AI overlay, what's really exciting about that is that you can simply put this over the CCTV image that's streaming, nonstop, and it will immediately recognize those things. Okay, male, red hat, blue jacket, this place. Within seconds, you immediately are able to find where they're at. And it's such an exciting thing because even in that image, you can see all sorts of people, but it will remove all people that don't match the description that you've given it. So that to me is
Yeah,
very exciting. And of course, it's going to help with security. but it's also going to help with the passenger experience in the future, because this is what will make it to where we go back to pre 9/11, where you're no longer having to stop at all anymore. That's the goal with this technology.
Yeah, everybody heard that here first. So, um, no stopping. Well, I know you can keep your shoes on now, so that's a good step.
There you go. Yeah, one
There's
step
some
at a time.
progress. Yeah, and it is faster, I think, with all the new technology. It seems like things are getting better, particularly at Hartsfield. So,
Mhm.
kudos for that. So you have a lot going on. How do you ensure? So data is with AI. Obviously, we're all talking about data optimization, and you can't have great AI without great data. So, and then, with you, I think particularly data quality, accessibility, security all ties into AI and the whole, kind of security element. How are you guys addressing that?
Mhm. Well, when it comes to data, well, I think we have a similar challenge as a lot of organizations. You probably know this very well, Tino. You probably hear this all the time. We have so much data,
Yeah,
and we don't know what to do with it or how to work with it. And data is in so many different places. And so we, of course, have that challenge as well. Um, but I think what's the opportunity that we have is when you do have that many people going through your one location in just one day, you can gain an immense amount of data, an immense amount of insights in a very short period of time. How many people can say that they can get an idea of general human behavior within an airport as quickly as us, because of the sheer amount of data that we can get?
yeah,
So that's the exciting part that we have. I have a chief data since I've been here. I put a chief data officer in place. We've developed an entire data team that's built up to about 7 individuals now, and that is their mission, and that is what they're doing. They've worked through to create a data governance strategy. They work with all the different business units to determine, well, what data do we even have? What do we want to do with it? And they're already starting to work some quick wins with some of these departments when it comes to what matters to them and what do they want in terms of insights. And we're really excited to move towards some data science,
yeah.
initiative.
So, you talk about geeking out, and I know I can see your passion when you talk about technology. And so I know you want to move as fast as you can, and then there's that balance between innovation and cybersecurity. And, I'm sure the leadership's always, security's on their mind. So how do you kind of evaluate risk and implement like new AI or biometric systems, that kind of thing, given the backdrop of, hey, we're at an airport, I mean, any place, but certainly at the largest airport in the world, you got to be thinking security all the time.
Oh, of course. If there's anything that keeps me up at night, probably like a lot of people, it is that
Yeah.
in the IT space. I think I'd like to, there's so many different routes I can take on that, but I'd like to stick with the idea of resiliency.
Yeah.
And so we know, unfortunately, what happened with Seattle in 2024, they suffered from a ransomware attack. And so that was a big disruption for them. But we are not invincible to that. We can certainly fall victim to the same challenge. And so for us, of course, it's been about, okay, well, what can we do to avoid that? But also, what can we do to bounce back as quickly as
Yeah.
possible?
That's a good point.
Can we take a, yeah. So it's about, can we take a hit and can we respond? And so there's been a lot of focus on ensuring that our infrastructure is more resilient and redundant. And so, but when it comes to 24, to answer your question on how do we do that here, how do we, get our organization to understand that, it was a challenge at first, because the first thing we wanted to do was deliberately turn off one of our concourses
Yeah.
from
Shut
a
down the
technology
concourse.
standpoint. Exactly. To test our systems and to make sure that the redundancy works, or to see where the problems were and to see if things would come back up.
Yeah.
And so, but that was a very scary thing for our organization, because we are 24/7, and there's a lot that goes into that. So it took about 4 months to get everyone on board. But once we got everybody on board, thankfully, I can now say that we've gone through every single one of our concourses. We installed redundancy within those concourses so that if something happens, we can keep going. And now our professionals are really on top of knowing what to do if something goes wrong. So we're in a much better situation when it comes to taking a plunge.
So being on the cutting edge, or I won't say bleeding edge, but cutting edge of things in airports, are you guys some of the first to try things in terms of other airports? I'm thinking you have probably a pretty good
Mhm.
group of airport leaders that you can sort of compare things with and the like. Is that true statement? Do you guys
It
I know
is.
we interviewed somebody with in the baseball area with the Red Sox, not on the
Mhm.
podcast, but it's like, they're all the professional baseball teams are, have their CIOs talking to each other about what are you doing?
Oh,
What are you
that's
doing?
good. I was wondering if they were going to be more competitive, but no, the airport space is it's incredible in that regard. I was just at a gathering just a few weeks ago where all the CIOs from the different airports were getting together and sharing honest lessons and what's happening. And I will say that each airport has their strengths and weaknesses. And
Yeah.
there are some airports, like I got to give kudos to Dallas Fort Worth. They've done
Uh,
some pretty incredible things. They've really leaned forward into, for example, digital twin capability. Very impressive, mature, probably the most mature of any airport in the world. They're doing incredible things there. I think where we, as ATL, Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta International Airport, how we've been able to really excel, and that's in the innovation realm, is actually in the space of biometrics. I think that in partnership with Delta is a fantastic airline to work with. They're
yeah.
headquartered here. We were the first to really mature the biometric process and use it, at international gates. And so since then, we are nearing completion of 30 international gates. So we've kind of, again, initially partnering with Delta, but we have kind of taken that on to make it more airline agnostic so that passengers benefit no matter what airline they're flying with. And we've installed that capability across 30 gates, and we're excited to complete all 40 international gates this year.
Well,
And so, yeah, we really expanded upon that technology.
so I don't think this question was on our list, but I'm going to ask it because it's
Okay.
it's on my mind. Humanoids, what is, if you looked out 5 or 10 years, I've been reading about humanoids being in your home taking care of things, which would be very nice. Uh, but what are you thinking about in terms of like in the future? What areas would they be most effective in? Is it like baggage claim or what?
I would say, well, I think so first, I think we need to start with, so what we're focused on when it comes to anything that's autonomous that
Yeah,
relates to things like that, humanoids, okay, yes, that would be really interesting and really exciting. We have actually been, we're starting with more vehicles and
okay,
starting with more
yeah.
autonomous vehicles.
Autonomous
And
vehicles. All right.
so that's the space that we're really diving into now. My chief technology officer and our director of innovation, actually, we've been partnering with a few different organizations. We will be doing a proof of concept here in 2026 when it comes to autonomous vehicles. And so that's the space I think we're really
Okay.
touching on first.
And what would the vehicle like? What would be the use for something like that? Or
Yes.
be some of
Well,
the uses?
we wanted to dive into something that was a little more exciting and
Yeah,
directly attached to aircraft, but
yeah,
that's a little risky to start there.
yeah,
So we're starting with things that are a little less exciting, but
yeah.
I'm excited about it, but I know, So, we were looking at perimeter detection, right? So that's one of those
Okay.
things that's important to our security professionals,
Oh
and then
yeah.
even fog detection, which is debris on the airfield and things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Hmm.
Great. So I'm switching gears a little bit and talking about, your leadership skills. And one of the things you said is you emphasize mentorship and also culture fit, when it comes to, I think probably hiring and motivating teams. How do you think about that as, in your position? You have, how many employees do you have in your area?
Well, we have. It gets a little complex, but I
Yeah.
think, yeah, we call them blue badgers. So a little over 110 that are
Yeah.
Department of Aviation, but there's certainly a lot more
A lot
than that
more.
when we consider our contract support here at our
Yeah.
organization. Yes.
Yeah. So mentorship, culture fit, how do you think about that in terms of hiring practices and
Mhm.
creating high performing teams?
I think based on everything I've expressed so far, my upbringing, the way that I feel,
Yeah,
it's very important to me to understand people's backgrounds, what their goals are, the challenges maybe they've had. If they're willing to share, I'm all ears. I love hearing their stories and where they come from. And it allows me to better understand, well, because each person is different and how and what motivates them. Each person is different and how they're inspired. What matters to one doesn't matter to the other.
yeah,
So I think really getting to know our people is very important. And that is certainly something I learned from the military as well. Something that the military I hold on to is that if there's something going on with an airman, so in the Air Force, you can't just fire them, right? Like the super,
yeah,
the NCO, you can't just like, you're fired, you're out of the military. That's not
yeah,
how it works. And so
right.
it really teaches you to say, well, I have to lead. I have to inspire. I have to figure this out. I have to connect and
Yeah.
figure out how to get them to accomplish the task, even though maybe they don't want to, or maybe there's something going on in their lives that is stopping them from being as productive as they could be. So I really come from that perspective a lot of times.
Yeah, I really like that point because I think about different places I've worked and there's, corporate models with a lot of structure and you do have the opportunity to promote, to terminate. And then sometimes you're working cross-functionally or you're in my case, it was like a very federated model. So you had to move people along, but you didn't have some of the tools like you're going to be
Mm,
terminated or you're going to be promoted or whatever it might be. I think that's a much even if you think you're a good leader and then you fall into one of those roles, then that's a real test to see how good a leader you are. Just
I
by,
think so.
saying you don't have all those, you can't in the military, you can't just fire them. So how am I going to work with them? It puts that extra opportunity and it doesn't make you do things so quick. So I love that point.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it's been what I hold on to for sure. I emphasize that with my leaders. I have quite, of course, a few layers of leaders that in
Yeah.
our organization, and that is certainly the culture that I hope for them to have is to take ownership of that and to find a way to connect with their people. So
So a lot of times I like to say, and I'm certainly guilty of this, you learn more from your failure or missteps than you do with your successes. Do you find that? And I don't know if you want to share a story, but something you learn from.
yes, plenty of failures, plenty of mistakes, and yes, I certainly learned a lot from that. And those are the things I think that I hold on to quite a bit. Matter of fact, just because it's connected to what I mentioned to you earlier, I talked about how we need to be more resilient and be able to take a punch. Well, a big part of the reason why I felt that way when I first came into this organization is because of an immense failure that I faced in my first role as CIO of the civilian hospital system.
25 years old. Yep.
Right. It was the most stressful time of my entire career. Um, to cut it short, one of my senior network admins came to me after just a couple months and said, "Hey, I believe one of our core switches is really starting to fail us at one of our hospital organizations, and we need to do something about it. It's far past end of life, but we haven't been able to get a replacement. Go through budget process." And I said, "Okay,"
Yeah.
you know, tempted to move it forward. Well, the organization unfortunately was losing money on a monthly basis, so funding was difficult. And so thankfully, I was able to convince my executive peers of the importance of this. But when it came to my very first board meeting ever,
Oh, yeah.
I went to explain the situation, thinking that it was a common sense and
Yeah.
that it was
Slam
a
dunk.
no-brainer. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because no core switch means no IT at all, no tech.
Right.
But I failed to convince them, and ultimately they denied it. And 2 weeks later, the core switch died. And our
Oh,
entire
yeah.
hospital system was completely down. It was a Friday evening. Our emergency room doctors, all of our physicians that were there were furious. They were frustrated. The nurses, they couldn't access patient information. It was a crisis. And so for the next 72 hours, I got about 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
And we worked to try to resolve the issue. So that was a failure that I'll never forget.
And I guess what you're not saying, but probably what you and I would say is then, what could you have done differently at that board meeting, or how prepared could you have been, or, something that, it's not second guessing, it's just learning from those things, right? So you're probably always more prepared than you or you're ready to handle objections, right? As I kind of
That
think about it.
that is exactly right. And that's why I'm glad I went through it, because from that
Yeah.
point forward, I have been, some would probably say, overly
Yeah.
prepared for these
Yeah.
discussions. I have the left and the right and all around, and the data and the reasons why. I even talk to everyone ahead of the meetings to make sure it's understood. I mean, I do
Yeah.
everything I
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure you have your votes beforehand, that kind of thing. That's
can.
great. I was going to use an example because this will be air after the Olympics are over, but watching the Olympics, and I did a LinkedIn on this recently and saying, you could train for 20 years to be a slalom skier, and you miss one gate and it's all over for you. So,
Mm.
typically we're lucky as leaders that you miss a gate, but it's not, you can go back the next day and be resilient. Now, your case is a little different than that because the lights went off, et cetera, et cetera. So that
Yeah,
not quite my example that I could use, but I do think a lot of times we can learn and then, get back in the saddle and, be not have something that's going to be life changing, but just, learn from it and move forward and, appreciate, fail fast, move forward, that kind of thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I have time for a couple more questions. And this, given your background, this will be an interesting one. But if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
It's difficult not to be a little emotional, based on that. It would be, probably no surprise based on the conversation that we've had. It would
Yeah,
be, to go ahead and take that leap to, pursue what it is that you think is meant for others and not you and your family. Because every now and then I did get exposed to certain families that seem to just have it together and have such a great life. And unfortunately, I just immediately thought, well, that's not me. That's not for us.
yeah,
I would love to say, hey, what you're thinking about doing or what you think you would like to do, pursue it, because you will figure it out. You're
yeah,
not bound to this forever. And I think I certainly would have provided that encouragement
yeah.
for sure.
Just that level of
Hmm.
confidence. It sounds like that you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So last
Yeah.
question, which probably could be the same answer, but I'll push you to see if there's another one. But if you could leave our listeners, now this is a leadership, leading with relevance podcast. So with one
Yes.
piece of advice regarding relevant leadership, what would it be?
Relevant leadership. Yes. So I man, yeah. So trying to perhaps deviate a little bit from what I've
Yeah,
expressed, to say that I do genuinely believe that as leaders, that we especially in CIO positions, or just maybe it's a CFO or COO, or the decisions that we make, of course, have a pretty substantial impact on the organization and the people of the organization.
yeah,
And I believe that it is so important to genuinely listen to your teams before making these decisions. And so, if you want to make a change in structure, if you want to make a change in policy, or if you want to make some adjustments to titles of people or what have you, I believe that it's always best to have the conversations with the people that are going to be impacted by those decisions. Yeah.
no, I like that. And it sounds like, one of the things that you lead by is, and see if you agree with this, but like empathy, empathetic leadership. So really understanding not the outcome necessarily of the technology, but what impact it has on the people as well.
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
And I think I've used the word empathetic a lot. So I've tried to find
Yeah.
a different way of saying it, but that is
Yeah.
100% the way that I feel.
Yeah.
I always think of, well, how would I feel if I was impacted in that
Yeah.
way? What would I
Yeah.
want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, this has been great. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining me on Relevance. I'm sure you and I will connect over the years for different things. But I think people really get something out of this because, you talk about the technology and everything you're accomplishing, but also you talk about the human side and the trials and tribulations and the challenges, real life things that a lot of times we don't get into on talking to anybody about. So, um, this has been great. So thanks for joining me, and I appreciate it.